So thanks for the opportunity to be with you today to talk about a report on resource efficiency, economics and outlook for Asia and the Pacific, which we have produced for the United Nations Environment Programme in collaboration with a number of partners, the Institute of Global Environmental Strategies in Japan, the Energy and Resources Institute in New Delhi, India, and the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute for Policy Studies in Beijing, also the University of Western Sydney in Australia. This report was necessary to provide information on and inform policies that can actually deal with the two objectives Asia and the Pacific is facing as a region, which are to deal with poverty in the region, to increase the standard of living of its people, but at the same time to do this within the available resources and in a way that the integrity of the environment is secured. If I could quickly run you through what the Resource Efficiency, Economics and Output report for Asia and the Pacific covers, then it would be about the history, the current conditions and the future of natural resource use in Asia and the Pacific. In the report, in its several chapters, we're looking at materials and waste, energy and emissions, water and land. We are tackling resource efficiency, which is about the economic efficiency at which we use those resources. We also employed modeling to look at the most plausible futures of resource use into 2050. And all of this is framed by policies that may help guide sustainable use of natural resources and, for that matter, sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific countries and the region as a whole. Within this short presentation, I can only give you a snapshot of what we did in this report, and I want to pick two separate topics I would like to speak about a little more. The first one is about a new data set we have created on material flows and resource productivity in the region on a country-by-country basis, covering 35 years of history. This is the first data set that has been done on this topic, so it's quite a new and impressive and exciting thing, I believe. The second thing I would then like to talk about is the modeling we employed in looking at resource futures in Asia and the Pacific as a region. I'd like to invite you actually to have a look at our online database, which we created together with the United Nations Environment Programme. This is a database on material flows that employs all the standard methodologies we have available for accounting for the resources that are used in an economy on a year-by-year basis. We cover biomass, fossil fuels, minerals, construction materials, and metals. We do this over 35 years of time, and this is for you to access via the internet and to do your own analysis and draw your own conclusions based on this data. Now, the important thing about to mention about this database is that it is actually endorsed by 3 international organizations: the United Nations Environment Programme, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, but also the Asian Development Bank. So this is kind of a new situation where 3 important organizations are actually coming out saying this is actually the data on which we will base our political recommendations with regard to sustainable use of natural resources in the region. I would like to show you a few high-level results from the analysis that you can do based on the database. The first picture I'm going to show you is about domestic material consumption in Asia-Pacific as a whole, comparing it to the rest of the world and to the global picture. What you can see here is that Asia-Pacific, starting from a very low level, has actually become the largest user of resources at the beginning of the 21st century. There are still very stark differences between resource use in the different Asia-Pacific subregions. So on the first picture, left-hand corner, you see a domestic extraction of materials. You see Australia and New Zealand sticking out of that picture with very high and fast-growing resource use. but also the Northeast Asia region actually catching up quickly and growing rapidly. The second indicator that is displayed here is what we call the physical trade balance. That presents information about whether resources are sourced from domestic environment or through trade. You can see here, again, Australia and New Zealand is a bit of an outlier because Australia and New Zealand is actually producing resources for the rest of the region. The interesting thing to look at is the region of Northeast Asia. Despite very small bars here, Northeast Asia has become a net importer of natural resources. And that is going to grow into the future as the economic transformation of that region continues. Now, if you put these two indicators together, you end up with what we call domestic material consumption. And again, you see Australia and New Zealand as the largest resource consumer in the region, followed by Northeast Asia. But the important information to take from this picture is that both Southeast Asia and South Asia, at current at a very low level, they continue to grow. At the next picture, we are looking at material efficiency in Asia and the Pacific, also for the rest of the world and the world. What you can see here is that over the last 35 years, economic efficiency of resource use on a global scale has actually continued to improve in all the years. That was not the case for the Asia-Pacific region, though. In this picture, you can see a stagnation for about 20 years, and then a reversal of the trend where actually Asia and the Pacific has started to use materials less efficiently on a year-by-year basis. And that has actually started to impact on global resource efficiency, where you can see that since the year 2000, for the first time in global history, you could say, actually as a global population, we're starting to use resources less efficiently. What you can also see from this picture is that Asia-Pacific produces only 1/3 of the added value of its resources than the rest of the world does. In the next picture, I'm going to talk about the driving forces behind resource use growth in the Asia-Pacific region. And we have used here a very simple accounting framework based on the IPAT equation, where the idea is that population, affluence, per capita incomes, and the technology factor would actually contribute to either increase or decrease of resource use. What you can see here for Asia-Pacific as a whole, but then for Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia in particular, is that affluence, that rising per capita incomes have been the main driver of resource use growth. Population has also been an important driver, but to a much lesser and over time decreasing intensity. What is important is that overall technology or all other factors combined actually contribute to a rise in resource use and not a decline as you would hope for. So what we're experiencing here is a large transformation of Asia and the Pacific developing countries from a pre-industrial to an industrial consumption and production system. And that goes hand in hand with systems of provision for food, for housing, for mobility that use much more resources and produce a higher number of emissions than the traditional systems did. So in summary, what we learned from the new data set on Asia-Pacific material flows and resource productivity indicators based on this data set is that we have a very dynamic region in front of us with a huge growth potential to come. So this is something that needs to be dealt with in terms of policy in order to achieve good outcomes. So next I would like to move to the modeling which we have employed to look at the future of resource use in Asia and the Pacific. We were using two different models, a physical stocks and flows model. It's actually a technology-based model that covers all the physical interactions in the economy, but also deals with trade, employment, and growth. Yeah. The second model we have been using is a non-equilibrium economic model based on monetary stocks and flows and operating with multiple sectors. Now, this economic model actually enables you, differently to general equilibrium models, to model the economic cycles which occur in the real world by looking at the interaction between banks, firms and businesses and workers. So if we actually constrain the model for an unemployment rate of about 5%, we can see that resource use in what we call here the high efficiency scenario would almost be as high as in the business as usual scenario. Similar is true for waste flows. If material use and waste in the Asian Pacific region remain unchecked, they would triple by 2050. What you see here is an overview of the three different scenarios we have employed in respect to their outcomes for materials, energy use, emissions and waste, but also GDP and employment. The first scenario, business as usual, drives up material and energy flows, but also emissions and waste. The resource efficiency scenario, where we actually employ all the technical potential, leads to an improvement over the first 2 decades, but then the growth reoccurs by 2030. The only scenario that actually brings a reduction in resource use is what we call systems innovation here, where we assume very different ways of providing food and organizing agricultural systems, of housing and mobility, energy and water. But this scenario at the same time is a little bit unpredictable in regard to economic growth and unemployment. I think if we sum that all up, what our report is saying is that sustainable resource use in Asia and the Pacific region will certainly not happen spontaneously. The most likely business as usual scenario is huge growth to come, which will have an impact on resource availability, supply security of resources, and the ability of people to achieve a standard of living, not just in Asia and the Pacific, but on a global scale that will have large impacts. We are arguing in the report that well-designed policies will be needed to guide efficiency gains and systems innovation, to come in a situation where we can actually furnish future human well-being with the available resources. The report also concludes that efficiency is a necessary but not sufficient condition for achieving that. There is a need for systems innovation and for new industrial systems to be created. That will require transformational policies, such as, for example, an ecological budget and tax reform, or other such policies that actually change the evolutionary environment in which businesses and households and also governments operate. So that's it in a nutshell. You will find the report here for you to take away and to read. We certainly hope that this report will inform policymakers, private enterprises, NGOs about the history, the current situation, but also the potential future of resource use in the region, in order to actually design those policies that are needed to help us to arrive in a sustainable future. I would like to take the opportunity to also thank at this point some of my collaborators, which you see here on the picture, Graham Turner and Francie Poldy, two senior modelers at CSIRO, and Professor Steve Keane, who is an economic modeler with the University of Western Sydney. Thank you very much.